Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and on this episode we're doing a top 10. Topic of this top 10, my top 10 favorite Philadelphia Eagle players. And yes, normally I do top 10s based on wrestling, but with this weekend being the start of the new NFL season, I figured why not throw out some love for my favorite team, give you my 10 favorite players. With that being said, this is going to be basically from the 1980s till now. I started watching the Eagles when I was a little kid in the 1980s. While I have respect for guys like Ron Jaworski, Chuck Bednarik, Bill Bergey, and the countless others that were great players for the Eagles, I didn't really get to watch their careers, so I can't say they're my favorites. I respect them. I love what they've done for the team that I'm a fan of, but again, I can't put them on my favorites list. With that being said, let's jump right in with number 10, Jalen Hurts. Now, if you come back in 5 years, 10 years, Jalen Hurts may make his way all the way to number 1. Already within his first 3 years, he's taken the Eagles to the Super Bowl, and you could say he even outplayed Patrick Mahomes in the game. Unfortunately, they came up a little bit short. They didn't win the game last year, but they are primed. They look to be a really good team. He seems to be a really good leader. I really enjoy the mentality he has, and you're going to notice this a lot with the players on this list. His mentality is basically a Philadelphia Eagle mentality. Work hard, grind it out, and try to win. I know the Eagles and the Eagles fans get a lot of hate from people, but we're passionate. And the team, we like to see the team as passionate as we are. With a guy like Jalen Hurts at the helm, I feel like our future's in pretty good hands. Now going from that, our number 9, Andre Waters. Now Andre Waters probably isn't a name that a lot of NFL fans know. He had his heyday in the late 80s, early 90s, when I was really ramping up my fandom as an Eagles fan. And he was kind of known as a violent player, almost a dirty player in some parts. He was the guy that would hit you helmet first before that was illegal and try and basically separate your body from the football. Just an amazing safety. I don't think he ever quite got the respect that he deserved, and I think he was a great player for a lot of years. I absolutely loved Andre Waters. That's why he's on my list. Now, our number 8, the ultimate weapon, Randall Cunningham. If Randall Cunningham came into the league 5 or 10 years later than he did, he would have been amongst one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. The style that he played, the style that players like Lamar Jackson use now, or Michael Vick used in his prime, of a hybrid running quarterback with a great arm. Randall Cunningham had one of the best arms in football that he could also run. And then, if you needed him to, he was an amazing punter as well. Just a highlight reel, and kind of was hampered by his time because there wasn't as much protecting the quarterback. If he would have played in the era where they protect the quarterback, he would be outstanding. I mean, he was outstanding as it is. Just a marvelous guy. One of the people that just, you wanted him to win so bad just because he was so charismatic and so good at the game. I wish the Eagles could have won with him at quarterback because I love Randall Cunningham. Now going from that, our number 7, one of Randall Cunningham's teammates, the Minister of Defense, Reggie White. And yeah, I know a lot of people look at Reggie White and remember him as a Packer because that's where he won the Super Bowl. But to me, Reggie White always was and always will be an Eagle. He was the linchpin of the Buddy Ryan defense. He was the most talented defensive end in football, and he was just a force. He would absolutely dominate football games, and he would be able to win football games from the defensive end position. An amazing, amazing talent. I believe he was a no-brainer first ballot Hall of Famer. One of the great defensive players in all of the history of football. To this day, I'm still pissed off at Norman Braman that he didn't even make an offer when Reggie became a free agent. He let Reggie White go to the Packers without even trying to keep. So for that, F Norman Braman forever. Reggie White, thank you. You were amazing. I'm glad he got a Super Bowl ring. I wish he would have got it as an Eagle. Now going from that, our number 6. The quarterback that led the Eagles to a Super Bowl, Donovan McNabb. Now, a lot of Eagles fans are very polarizing on McNabb. You either love him or you hate him. Some of them feel like he may not have played his best in the Super Bowl. Some of them forgive that because of all the other things, basically, that he did without really having a true number one wide receiver other than the little bit over a year he had Terrell Owens there. But he was giving guys like James Thrash, Todd Pinkston, who, don't get me wrong, I love those guys, and expected to go out and win, and he did. They lost to one of the great teams of all time, the New England Patriots, and Tom Brady. In the Super Bowl, he did take them to. And I know some of the stuff he's done after his career hasn't been great, but just the joy I had watching Donovan McNabb, you always felt like he kept you in the game and he could have won you any game. You got to remember, even though they didn't win any Super Bowls with McNabb, he was extremely successful as their quarterback, took them to the playoffs basically every year, took them to the NFC Championship multiple times. Just a great quarterback, one of my favorites to ever play the game. I'll go on from that, our number 5, a contemporary of Donovan McNabb, Troy Vincent. Troy Vincent, to me, was one of the best cornerbacks I've ever seen. Him and Bobby Taylor made such a great tandem together and worked so well together, they basically shut down any receiver that was going up against them. Troy, to me, his poise, his dignity, the way he carried himself, the way he played on the field, he was such a great player. I did get the chance to meet him one time at an Eagles training camp, and he couldn't have been a nicer guy. He talked to me for a few minutes there. He signed a banner, which I still have hanging in my bedroom. Just a fantastic player, absolutely amazing at what he did. I love Troy Vincent. I'll go on from that, our number 4, the quarterback that won us the Super Bowl, Nick Foles. Nick Foles may not have been the best player that ever played for the Eagles. He may not have been the best quarterback they ever had, but he was the right guy. In a way, Nick Foles represented everything that the Eagles were. He was the underdog. He was overlooked. He was released and cut by multiple teams at this time. I mean, the Eagles let him go before here. He wasn't expected to play. Carson Wentz was expected to be the MVP of that year, and that's how far Carson Wentz has fell. He's not even on a team at this time, just a few years later, but he had a fantastic year as well. We don't win the Super Bowl without Carson Wentz. He took us to the playoffs. Nick Foles guided us to the Super Bowl, had one of the great plays in the history of the Super Bowl with the Philly special. Just an amazing story. A guy that I can't say enough good things about. Like I said, he might not have had all the greatest stats. He might not have been Dan Marino. He might not have been Peyton Manning. But he was Nick Foles. And guess what? Nick Foles beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. I don't think you could have a better thing to put on your resume than that. Now, going from Nick Foles, one of his Super Bowl teammates at number 3, Jason Kelce. Jason Kelce, along with Lane Johnson, have been the linchpins of the Philadelphia offensive line that has carried them through basically a decade, made them a formidable unit no matter who was at quarterback, whether it be Foles, whether it be Wentz, whether it be Jalen Hurts now. These two guys basically are two of the best offensive linemen in the history of the game. And to me, I take the nod of Jason Kelce just because I love so much of his attitude. He has embraced the city of Philadelphia, from everything from his Super Bowl speech, wearing the Mummers outfit, to just showing up at other teams' sporting events, to being basically the ambassador for the Philadelphia Eagles. What a great player. I'm going to be really sad when he finally hangs it up, because I think this may be his last year, or he may only have 2 left. What a great player. One of the core players that have really brought this era of the Philadelphia Eagles into prominence. Him, Fletcher Cox, Lane Johnson, Brandon Graham, all guys that are just core players that make this team great. Now, going from that, our number 2, probably one of the biggest what-ifs of my lifetime as far as the Eagles go, that's Jerome Brown. Jerome Brown passed away, unfortunately, in the early stages of his career. I think he was only 4 or 5 years into his career when he passed away. He may not even been that far into it. But for what he did on that team that he played with, him and Reggie White and Clyde Simmons and Seth Joyner, Mike Pitts, Mike Golick, the aforementioned Andre Waters, they were a force. And Jerome, much like Jason Kelce, basically was the face of the team at the time. He was the guy that would do the interviews. He was the guy that was front and center. He was the guy that did all of the charity work. He was the guy that the fans loved because he was so charismatic and such a great player. I really think if Jerome Brown could have lived and had a full career, he would have been basically where we think of Warren Sapp right now. We would have thought of Jerome Brown in that same kind of vein. He would have had that kind of career. He was that good. Unfortunately, his life got cut short. Rest in peace, Jerome. We did finally bring it home for you. 2018 on your birthday, we did bring it home for Jerome. So just one of the great players. One of my saddest moments in sports history. And if you're a Philadelphia sports fan, you know we have a bunch of them. Pelle Lindbergh, Jerome Brown, other stuff that's maybe not so life-threatening but disappointing otherwise, like Joe Carter. And you know, if you're a Philly fan, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Rest in peace, Jerome. You were the man. Now, before I get to my number one, I do a thing here on my top 10s called the best of the rest. Basically, players that were considered for the list but didn't quite make it. First up, Brian Westbrook. My favorite Eagles running back of all time. I mean, they've had some great ones. Wilbert Montgomery, Deuce Staley, Keith Byers, Herschel Walker all come to mind. But to me, Westbrook was the guy. He was such a devastating tool. He could be used in the running game. He could be used in the punt returns. He could be used for receiving. He was basically our version of Marshall Faulk in a way. He was so good at everything he did, and one of those cogs of those Andy Reid teams that were so great and were in the playoffs every year. Just a great, fantastic player. I love Westbrook. Now, last but not least, on the best of the rest, one of Westbrook's old teammates, Jeremiah Trotter. The Eagles have had a lot of great linebackers in their time. Chuck Bednarik, Bill Berge, Byron Evans. To me, Jeremiah Trotter was my favorite. He had that swagger. He had that drive. He had that almost manic style where you believed that any play at any time he was going to make the play that helped you win the game. Just a great player. He was considered for the list, unfortunately didn't make it. Now, before I get to my number one, let's smash that like button, share the video, subscribe if you haven't. And if you see where it says join, that's how you become a channel member. It would definitely help me out if you decided to do that. Now, my number one favorite Philadelphia Eagle of all time, Weapon X, Brian Dawkins. What can I say about Brian Dawkins that hasn't been said a million times over by every football analyst that ever watched any of his games? This guy was the heart and soul of the Philadelphia Eagles. When I think of the Philadelphia Eagles and I think of one player that embodies them, that's Brian Dawkins. Hard work, determination, grit, grind, toughness. You could feel every bit of emotion in Brian Dawkins, whether it would be him crying on the sidelines because they lost, or him letting out a scream of joy because they just beat the Falcons to go to the Super Bowl, or he laid a devastating hit on Algie Crumpler. Just an amazing player, an amazing human being, one of the absolute greats that have ever done it. I mean, one of the best safeties you're ever going to see. And if you don't believe me and you haven't seen him, at the end of this video, go look up Brian Dawkins highlights. Watch all the videos, watch the craziness, watch just how devastating he was. Just an amazing player. Any way you slice it, Brian Dawkins was just great. And I think back to the one Madden game, I forget what year it is, where he opens Madden, where he's just saying, "Can you feel it? Can you feel that thing beating in your chest?" God, that still pumps me up. I still watch that to this day because it's just so great. And he's that guy. He's the ultimate cheerleader in a way for the team. He's the ultimate rah-rah guy. He's the ultimate put everything you have and leave it out there on the field. What a great player. My absolute favorite Eagle of all time. Now, one last thing before I do go off of this video, and thank you for sticking around if you have. If you have, I'm going to guess you're either a fan of mine or a fan of the Philadelphia Eagles. If you're a fan of the Eagles, I want you to sing along with on three. 1, 2, 3. Fly, Eagles, fly, on the road to victory. Fight, Eagles, fight, score a touchdown, 1, 2, 3. Hit 'em low, hit 'em high, and watch our Eagles fly. Fly, Eagles, fly, on the road to victory. E-A-G-L-E-S, Eagles! Here's to a great season. Thank you for watching. My name is George Coles, and this has been another Top 10.